Okay, this is tutorial 16. What I'm going to do here, basically the code's already been added. I'm going to walk you through it because it's a lot of code. In our original, if we run our original way we ran it, we're going to show you we had this. These are the qualities that were loaded. They were the original array is equivalent to item array. We added 3 more arrays, or I should say I did, 2, 3, and 4. We declared the variables in our declaration file, created the properties here, all of them the same way, 2, 3, and 4. You've seen this before. Nothing overly crazy about that. And over here, we fill them. Again, self and the array, and we've placed in, this is our original item array, and then we added 1, 2, 3. And you notice they have different numbers of items within them. We also sort them so that when they're in the selector, they're sorted in order. And that's so you have for every one, you have a sort, a fill, a property, and a variable. And of course you also have a release, so 2, 3, and 4 get released as well as the initial array. So all of your data in your app delegate is there. We come to the picker class. We add an alert view delegate to that because we want to show an alert view, right? Nothing else is changed. And then we come over to our add picker. This is where it gets meaty with the code, lots of code, because we'll come right over here. This is our number of rows in component. We need to know the number of rows for each wheel. The first wheel is static, right? It's the same no matter what. We return the count of the array for that wheel. In the second wheel, depending upon the item selected in the first wheel, we return the count of either array 1, 2, 3, or 4. So if I would select row 0, I would get item 1 array count. Row 1, I would get item array 2 count. Row 2, item array 3 count. Row 3, item array 4 count. We need to have that in there. If we don't, now these two arrays are the same size, there'd be no issue if we used item array. If we just returned the item array count, item array 2 would be fine, but because these two are smaller, you would get an error and you would have an exception. Then we come down here. Since we got the count, now we have to have the objects. And you see how bulky this code gets. Again, we look at the first wheel, we take the first wheel, we return what objects are going to be in the first wheel, and based on the item selected in the first wheel, the row I should say selected in the first wheel, we then return the items for the second wheel. So again, if we select row 0 here, we would return the item array 1. If we were to select row 1, it would be item array 2, row 2, item array 3, and row 3, item array 4. So that would be rows 0, 1, 2, and 3. And that would give us the information to populate those wheels. So those will match the counts, and they have to. Otherwise you'll get an error. Okay. And we did it with a switch statement. We looked again. A switch within a switch. Our first switch is for the component that we select, and the second switch here is for what row within the first component did we select. This works out really nice. In our didSelect method, the only thing we have here now is if we select the first wheel, then reload the items. I'm sorry, this the first wheel, right? Then reload the items in the second wheel and set the row of the second wheel to the very first row or 0 and animate that. And then, okay, now that we have that, when we run it, I'm just going to run it now to show you what it does, at least that much. Again, this is a dependent picker. First wheel, or I should say the second wheel, depends upon what the first wheel is. So if I select that one, they change here, right? This lover, and then pal, they change here, and person, they change here. I can go back to friend, and I'll get the original, right? The original one. And I can move these about with no issue, and it'll set it back to the bottom, right? It's doing exactly what the code says it should. It's really neat. This being said, this is really, you're dealing with static arrays, but you're creating a dependent picker. It's very bulky on code, but it does work. Okay, so now let's go to this button pressed event. We create a string for the selected item. We allocate it, right? We then determine what row is selected, right, in the second picker, the second one, the item we're looking to select. So that's the quality picker wheel. What row was selected there? We then run this switch again, because what we have to do here is we have to look at the first wheel and return the correct array for which we want to find the object we've selected. So for example, if I've selected row 0, alright, in the category, I need to return the object in item array 1 at the row I selected in that wheel. So for example, if I selected row 5, I have to then return item array 1 and the object at row 5. But however, if I selected row, instead of row 0 in the categories, if I selected row 2 in the categories, I've got to return the third array and then find the object at the row that I've selected there as well. If I don't do this, if I use the very first array only, I'm going to just parse through that array. I need to parse through the correct array. So I hope this makes sense to you. Again, quick recap. Look at the first wheel. When I look at the first wheel, I want to know what row I select in the first wheel. When I know that, I can then figure out what array to parse through and at what row in that second wheel the item will be found. I have a title here, add selected quality. I have a message, are you sure? And this slash n with the percent, and this is basically a carriage return. It'll go to the next line. And this here is, you've seen this before, is our percent string, and this is going to place the selected item on the next line. So you're going to have, are you sure you want to add next line, and the item number, and a question mark. Then of course we bring the alert view, we allocate that with the title and the message, which are here, right? Much easier than having to put all this junk in here. And then we delegate it to itself, which is the class here. We have a cancel button that says no. We have another button, we're going to call that the yes button. We're going to show the alert view, we're going to release it, we're going to release the title, the message, and the selected item. So the question then becomes is, how do I know which item I've selected? Okay, well the cancel button has a category, or actually a number of 0, and the other one has a button index, I should say, of 0. This is our alert view clicked button at index method. We've seen this before. We saw this when we added dwarf over here. Right, it's going to go quick here. Right, alert view, yeah, clicked button at index, right? So we've seen this before. Going to go back here, and it says, okay, we need to know which button was selected. If I select 0 or cancel, just dismiss the alert view. If I select else, which is going to be 1, we want to release, we'll get to this, we want to release this string, string, and then we want to pop the view, add the object first, release the string, pop the view. But let's look at this string here. Why do we need the string? What is the string all about? Well, once again, in order to add the item, see here, we had to know what we selected. So we had to parse through the arrays based on what the first wheel, the row in the first wheel. Well, it's the same thing here. This is why code gets bulky. Now I've got to look again at the arrays. Why? Because I need to actually add the item. So I've got to look here, I've got to create a string called selected item, and basically it's copied code, which does make it easy. We copy the same code here as here. So, and it's okay if they're named the same, they're in separate methods, the scope is fine. So we say here, end string selected item equals end string allocate and initialize it. The integer here, this is going to be give me the row you've just selected in the second wheel. Once we know that, we look at the first wheel and we say, okay, what row did we select there? If we selected 0, which is the first row, or the 0th row or the first row, give me this array, pick up the first array, and find the object at index in the row we selected. Right? Which is what we did here. Okay, so it's going to return the object that has been selected. And it's going to say, okay, instead of over here where we just put it in our in our alert view to be displayed to the user, you're sure you want to add that object. Here we're actually going to add it. This is the confirm. We're going to add it, and we're going to say app delegate quality array, add the object and our selected item, which is here, which is our string, and then we release our string. So I think this is pretty straightforward and simple, but it's a lot of code to do in one sitting, and you have to get it right. And as we just saw, as I ran it before, it's a dependent picker. It changes based upon the first item that is selected. So in that category row, whichever category I pick, I get a new list of categories to be populated. That being said, these are four static arrays being at different times will be populated in that second wheel. Alright, we're going to run this and go through this quickly and show you what it's doing before we close out here. Again, so let's pick up the second row here, and let's pick up, I don't know, Cupid here, and it's going to ask me if I want to add it. Now if I say no, it'll just dismiss it, but if I say yes, notice it populated it right here. Why did it do that? Well, let us go quickly to our detail view controller, our implementation file, and in the method, whoops, that's the view did load. In the method, view will appear. I sorted it. And you've seen this sort. I've done this about 4, 5, 6 times. So we reload it and then we sort it. So come back here again. Alright, we're going to add another one. Let's go with the PAL line. Let's go to Homey. Alright, going to add Homey to that one. Say yes. And that's placed in there. And you could do this as much as you want. Person will add duo, right? And so on. And this is a dynamic picker, and you can set them up. You could do this not just with 1 or 2 wheels. You could do it with 3 wheels, but the code is going to get very, very bulky. Now, when you come to SQLite, what happens is, in SQLite, based on the item that's selected in the first wheel, you run a method to then return the new array to populate the second wheel and its length. And it's only one array. It just changes its length, and it changes the number of objects, therefore, in it, and what objects are in it. And it works out much better than this. It's less code, it's less bulky, and it's truly dynamic in that sense, where this one is more static. And that's really it. Apart from one other item we have to really look at, and that would be, I don't know if I want to do it here, but what would happen if I added an item that already existed here? So I may do this for tutorial 17 to finish out the pickers for now and post all of this in, on the website. But and of course that means now to look at the array, to sort through the array and see if the item selected equals any item in the array. Think about that for a moment. Does the item selected equal any item within the array? Pardon me. So this code now, if we go through it just one more time quickly, we had to do some things here. 1, we had to return the count, the proper count based upon the array we need to look at. And that depends upon which item in the first wheel is selected, the category wheel. Then we had to return the items based upon the item selected in the category wheel. Well, if we selected row number 2, which happens to be actually 1, because 0, 1, 2, 3, right? Row 2, then we got to use this array and return the object at the row. Okay? And then, once we have the items, this is only for the sake of populating a new view of it, changing the wheels. And then once we have that done, then we have to use this data. We have to, A, in the button pressed, be able to take the item and place it in our alert view to alert the user, do you want that item? And then over here, we then have to actually add it. So it's a lot of code, and it can be done, but it is bulky. It is very, very, I would say, takes a lot. And like I said, when you get to SQLite, it's a truly dynamic setup, because what happens is you're only going to use one array, and the array, based upon the item you select in the first wheel, you're going to take that item selected, and you're going to run a method to requery the list of items you need for the second wheel, and then you're going to set it that array equal to that. Of course, it's all done in code, and so you have one class that looks into the database and queries a database for the new array. Then you have the app delegate, which now populates that array, and then you now access it from your picker, and now it's a new array with, let's say, I could do this, if I had a list of colors. If I selected color from the first wheel, it would then query the database for the colors. Or if, I were using anything else, whatever you want to call it, it would be a requery. Now, this being said, when I do the database work here, let's say, for example, I have in my database, I would have two tables. I would have a table with the categories and a table with the items. And what I would do is I would use a select statement, which is called, we'll get into select statements when we get into SQLite, of a composite of both the category and item tables. And what I would then do is I would list all of my items based upon the categories. Okay, so if I looked for the colors, they would come up, or if I looked for the jewels, ruby, sapphire, whatever, that would come up. Alright, and it doesn't matter what category it is, I can take the category selected and then repopulate the array for the items selected. So this is why SQLite is so very important. It cuts down on the code. It really does. Doesn't mean you can't make a dynamic, and go back here. Doesn't mean you can't make it a dynamic, dependent picker. It's not truly dynamic, but we're going to show you again here. If I select here, I'm sorry. Let me go back. Do that again, right? And select here, and you see them move, and there we go, and you see them move like that. And now I'll select this one here. It's just, it works. All right, this will also work with a SQLite database, but the difference being is that every click that you're in the did select method now is going to query that database based upon the selection and then repopulate over here. So this is how you do it. It's neat code. I'm gonna post this code to the website so that you'll have it, and we'll follow up with tutorial 17. I don't know if I'm going to place the I'd like to place the check. Yeah, I think I'll do that to close out the pickers. Tutorial 17 will have the checks. What I'll do is I will post this code for 16 at my website, up to 16 at my website. I will leave the if statements in here and everything else. I won't take it out. And once this is posted, so this is really 16, 15, 14, and 13. I'll post it at the website, and then 17 I'll post by itself, and that will be just how you want to check to see if an item's already been selected or is already in the array based on what's selected. And I'll see you in tutorial 17. Hope this has helped you, and please go through it. Again, not difficult, but it has a lot of code. And if it doesn't make sense or you're having trouble with it, contact me at either email address, and I will be glad to help you with it. Take care.